It's been about 2 years that I've been shooting the 617 format. I have here the cameras that I've used in that time, starting with the Chroma 617, moving on to the half-plate camera that I adapted to shoot 617, and then finally I have my version of the Shootout, the EB617 Mark II. And in that time, and using these cameras and then showing them my use of the cameras on YouTube, one of the most common questions I get is, which camera's best? What's the best 617 camera out there that's affordable, and which one should I buy? Unfortunately, the answer is not simple. And so rather than constantly copying and pasting that answer back into the YouTube comments every time someone asks me, I thought it might be an idea to make a video just comparing the pros and cons of each of these cameras that I've used, and hopefully that might give you an idea of what kind of camera will suit your needs, because not every camera is going to be the right camera for every single person. Shock horror. So we'll start with the Chroma 617, which is my first 617 camera that I've had for almost 2 years now. And then we'll move into the EB617 Mark I, which was a half-plate camera that I adapted to shoot 617 with a 3D printed back. And then we'll move on to the EB617 Mark II, which is a fully 3D printed 617 camera that I have been working and using close to a year now. So the first camera we'll look at is the Chroma 617. This camera I've had for almost 2 years now, and it was my entrant into the 617 film format. It is a fully 3D printed camera and exceptionally light. It's 415 grams with a lens. So for those of you who are thinking of a camera that take hiking or something like that, this is definitely the camera for you. In fact, it's so light that it actually has a grip, and so theoretically you could actually use it as a handheld camera, although the idea of shooting 617 handheld I find terrifying, but there are people out there who probably have done it. Now the way these cameras work is they use a lens cone, so they're held in place with magnets. That's quite tight. So you have a lens cone. This is a lens cone for a 135mm lens, and it clips in with some very nice strong magnets, and then you have a helicoid at the front for focusing. Then on the back you have your ground glass, which can then be removed, and you attach your film back. And that's probably the main thing that sets the Chroma 617 apart from a lot of the other 3D printed cameras of this ilk, like the Noble and so on, or even the Fuji 617 camera, in that once you've loaded the film, most cameras you can't see your shot. You have to basically focus via scale and just kind of guesstimate your framing. Whereas because you've got the ability to remove the film back and pop in a ground glass, with the Chroma 617 you can get precise framing, precise focus and so on, as well as being incredibly lightweight. The other big thing for me that really drew me to this camera was how cost effective they are. They're about $600 US for a camera with one lens cone. You can get additional film backs for $170 each, and additional lens cones are another $100 on top of that. The print quality of these cameras is exceptional. Chris, the guy who runs Chroma, he's really got his settings dialed in. The quality of all of the parts in terms of 3D printing is as good as I've seen. So realistically, they are an incredible amount of camera for the money, and I've had a lot of fun using this camera. However, there are a few cons. The first con is kind of attached to its greatest benefit as well. The fact that it is so small and portable and lightweight means that you do miss out on some of the features that a larger view camera will offer. There are no movements, so you don't have any rise, tilt, shift, swing, fall, etc. The lens is fixed and it sits in the one position. As well as that, the fact that the lens is fixed in one position using a lens cone, for a single camera with a single lens, it's spectacular. It's very portable, very lightweight. But if you want to add more than one lens, you then have to add another lens cone, and they are quite bulky. They're not small. So you can imagine if you wanted to bring 2 or 3 lenses with you, you've got 2 or 3 of these that you need to fit into your bag, as well as you need to buy a lens cone for every lens. So if you add 4 lenses, that's $400 that you've had to add to the cost of your camera, which can get a little bit painful. Then you have the film backs, and this is probably the other area where I have had the greatest gripe with the camera. I have had quite a few problems with light leaks with the film backs. Some of them I don't think were Chris's fault or the design's fault, and some of them you could argue were. The first issue I had is the first back I had massive amounts of light leaks, and it was discovered, or I discovered, that when you pull the dark slide out, there's actually a strip of magnets that seals up and basically seals that top lip where the dark slide goes. The downside of that is it wasn't sealing instantly. It was it had like a 2 or 3 second delay. It was letting massive amounts of light in, as well as the dark slide itself. It is made of plastic. It's not a metal dark slide. When it's removed, it can also let more light in. The result is, and this is probably a good sign of the problems I've had with this dark slide, is it's hard to return it. I've discovered that when you're shooting, if you just leave the dark slide up like that, that helps you with a lot of the light leak problems, and then you just slot the dark slide down when you're ready to advance on the shot. I also 3D printed these little sections at the top and added some additional gasket material, which helped a lot. But out of the box, I've got 2 film backs and they both leak like a sieve until I make these changes. So that wasn't great. The other thing is, when you are bringing the dark slide back down again, if you don't do it exactly straight, it can sometimes get caught and then it won't go all the way down. And I did have a situation where I didn't realize that, and every time I lowered the dark slide, it wasn't actually going all the way down and it was allowing light in from the bottom, which wasn't great. But other than that, once those little problems of the light leaks were solved, for the most part, the film backs have been great and I haven't had any problems with them. They're like the camera, they're 3D printed and built really well with magnets, which are very strong actually, for holding the film back closed. You've got your window here to see what frame you should roll onto. So that's the film back. The other, probably the big negative for me, is the ground glass. It's a benefit, is the ground glass, but because it's not actually attached to the camera, it's a loose piece. And for some reason, it's not magnetized in place. Everything else in this camera is held in place by magnets, but not the ground glass. I didn't know that. For some reason, my brain thought there were magnets, and I think it was like the second time I took the camera out to shoot with it. I had the ground glass on the camera, and when I was moving the camera around trying to find a shot, ground glass fell off and smashed on the ground. Luckily, Chris does sell replacement glass for the ground glass, so it was a fairly simple process to replace it, and this is before I knew how to make my own ground glass. But what I also did was I 3D printed and created a little bracket for the camera, so now the ground glass is attached and it can slot out of the way when you want to put on your film back. Take off your film back, and then you can pop your ground glass on like so. Once again, these are available on Thingiverse. I chucked them up into the Thingiverse if anybody who has a Chroma 617 wants to print off those. It's a fairly simple print, and that solves that problem of it. It is also worth mentioning that there are quite a few options for this camera. Chris has done a lot of work of creating different versions of the camera, so you can get 6x17, I think there's a 6x12, there's different options for the camera, as well as he has made a lens cone that has some movements in it. I think it's got rise and fall and shift from memory, but they're fairly small, and it does add a bit of bulk to the front of the lens cone. I haven't had a chance to use that, so I can't really talk to how good it is, but it is good to see that you know, when you buy a camera like this, it's not sort of being ignored. There are new features and new options. You know, he's doing, it seems like every week he's releasing a new camera. So I can highly recommend the camera, and also I've had nothing but spectacular support from Chris. In fact, when my first film back came, when I got my first camera and the film back had light leaks, I emailed him, and instantly, as soon as I sent him the email and explained to him the problem, he had already shipped out a replacement film back to me, which I think was spectacular service and support. The only downside is the replacement film back had basically the same problem, and it turns out it was a design problem with the film backs, but solved with the addition of some 3D printed parts and some glued in gasket material. So that's the Chroma 617. Exceptionally good camera, a few little quirks, as it were, but for the most part, for the amount of money that these cameras cost, it's incredible value for money. The next camera we're going to talk about is what I've been calling the EB617 Mark I, but is actually an Asanuma & Co Limited half-plate film camera. These cameras, depending on which versions you can get, can be over 100 years old, but they're available on eBay and so on, and for not a lot of money, only a couple of $100. In their base form, they shoot half-plate film with timber film backs, but they can be fairly easily modified to shoot 4x5 because half-plate is almost impossible to get these days. They are a folding camera, so they're incredibly portable. They weigh about 2 kilos, give or take, plus lens. But to put it together for shooting is fairly simple. Let's see if I can do this backwards, like so, and then lock that in there. And there you have yourself a view camera. A couple of things, they only have rise and fall movements. So you've got rise and fall, you don't have any other movements on the front standard, and you have no movements on the back standard. You have a ground glass here, which flips out of the way like so for your film back. And other than that, they are a beautiful piece of camera, especially if you pull them apart and polish up all of the bright work and replace all the screws, which I've done with this one. They are a really nice little camera. But what I was able to do was I was able to take the film backs, the half-plate film back, and model a replacement for it to shoot 617. And this is actually the first film camera that I ever modified using 3D printing. So all you do is you put your ground glass out of the way, and then this slots in like so, slots across like that, and you have a 617 film back. And this basic design is what I used as the basis for my 617 Mark II camera, but in this form, it shoots really well. If I was to take the film back off, and that's probably the only negative of this design, is because it is timber and mixing timber and the 3D printing and so on, to make sure that it is light tight and so on, required that all of the tolerances be quite tight, which means that sometimes sliding the back on and off can be a little bit painful. But for the most part, it works really well. And then you've got your film back here. And this was actually my first go at designing this, so it's a little bit different if you've seen the EB617 Mark II. The way that they're held in place is a little bit different, but the actual film cart is pretty much the same. And also, at the time, my 3D printer, I had a much older 3D printer at the time that wasn't able to print even as large as I can now. So this film back is actually printed in 2 halves, which are then glued together, which presented a few little problems as well. But once it's glued together, you've got yourself your little catches. It's a fairly simple way of getting into 617 format with a camera that can also shoot 4x5. There are a few negatives. Obviously, the fact that there is no movement other than the front standards rise and fall. The fact that you are using a somewhat 100-year-old camera means that quality can vary as well. They're not particularly light cameras. And it really does take a little bit of a tinkerer's spirit, I think, if you want to go into this kind of 617 camera. That being said, I had a lot of fun pulling this camera apart, polishing up all of the bits of metal and so on, and getting it to this stage. I did obviously have to replace the bellows. Pretty much all of the cameras that are on eBay have bellows that are basically Swiss cheese. So you will have to replace the bellows. If you don't want to make your own, and you want to buy bellows, you're looking for about another $200 US, give or take there. So realistically, the bellows cost as much as the rest of the camera. But that's really the only real hardware that you'll need to get this camera to work. Then some 3D printing. The files are freely available on Thingiverse. If you shoot if you search 617 Mark I, these will come up. And yeah, it's a really nice camera. Which brings us to the EB617 Mark II. Now, caveat, obviously I do sell this on my website. You can either buy the 3D files and print your own version, or you can buy a fully assembled camera like this. But I like to think that having used the other cameras, I have a good understanding of where the pros and cons of this camera are. And you know, I think it has a lot of pros, but there are definitely some cons as well. There is definitely things that the other cameras do better. So with that, let's have a quick go through of the benefits of the camera and then look into some of the cons. So it is a fully standard view camera. So you've got a Linhof Technica lens board mount, so you can use pretty much any lenses that have a image circle big enough for 617 it will take. The bellows will extend about 300mm, so you can pretty much put just about any lens that you could want to attach to 617 onto this. Really anything over 300mm you're going to be going telephoto anyway. But it will take all of those lenses. You've got full movements on the front, so you've got all your normal shift, swing and tilt, as well as you've got your rise and fall. Pop those back in. You've also got movements on the back. You've got shift on the back and rise and fall. You don't have swing. And then you've got, if I take off the ground glass cover, you've got your ground glass, and that's where you attach your film back. And that's probably something that's worth mentioning about actually all the cameras, not just the EB617, but the other two cameras as well, is the cost of these film backs. If you want to print your own, obviously this costs you, once you've bought the 3D files, it only costs you the filament. But even if you were to buy them, I think from memory on my website, they're like $150, something like that. The Chroma 617 is $150, and the EB617 Mark I, they're once again 3D printed, so they're free. Compared to the cost of, say, a Shenhao, you're looking at about $800 or $900 for a replacement film back. If you're thinking of shooting and having a couple of these film backs, you know, one for black and white, one for colour, it makes a lot more sense to go with one of these three cameras than going for something like a Shenhao. You'll be spending a lot of money on film backs. One of the other benefits is also, with the 617 Mark II, is you can put on a different back. So this is a 4x5 back. So 4 screws on the back. The bellows are magnetic, so they disconnect. You attach this, and you've got yourself a 4x5 camera from your 617 camera. As far as negatives go, the cost of this camera, if you were to buy a fully printed, a fully built camera such as this, it is a little bit more expensive than, say, a Chroma 617, and obviously more expensive than the Mark I, but it's still significantly cheaper than something like a Shenhao. For me, the other main negative or con, as it were, is the fact that you can't collapse it. It's not as transportable as something like as a 617 is. You know, it takes up a fair amount of space. Even in its closed up form, it still takes up a decent amount of space, and it does weigh a significant amount more than the 617, the Chroma. And for me, the other big thing is, because this is fully 3D printed, normally this has got some aluminium front brackets that I've been testing out. I've been testing some CNC, but you'll see at the back here we've got 3D printed here. And normally, even in the built cameras, the whole front stand is actually printed out of carbon fibre. Because they are 3D printed, what I notice is the movements are just not as smooth feeling as with a metal bracket that you would get on something like a Shenhao. So for instance, if you're looking at your front standard movements, the actual movement is the same and the end result is the same. You get your lens exactly where you want it and you take your shot. But just the feeling of PLA or carbon fibre moving over carbon fibre versus with something like a Shenhao where you've got metal on metal, the movements of the standards, the just fine adjustments, just feel a little nicer. I quite like the feeling of the rear standard. I think I've done really well there. I'm happy with that one. But for instance, you know, the rise and fall, yes, it works, but it just feels a little bit less supreme, as it were, as compared to, say, metal on metal. So for me, that's probably the main negative or con of the camera. So there you have it. 617 cameras. I don't think there's ever been a time in history where there are more options for shooting 617 than there are now. There are a variety of 3D printable cameras out there available. Chroma 617 is one of them. The EB617 Mark II is another one. There are a variety of pre-made cameras, such as the Shootout, that you can also purchase. And then there are some intermediate options where you can take an existing camera and convert it to shoot 617. What's the right camera? It depends. If you want an incredibly light camera that's really easy to use and really quick to set up, the Chroma 617 is definitely the camera for you. I mean, right now, if I was going to be hiking up a mountain or something like that, that's probably the camera I would take because it's light, fast and easy to use, and there's no parts that it can sort of get damaged or something in a backpack that's being thrown around a mountain. If, however, I was going out to shoot a specific location and I've got plenty of time and plenty of time to set up, then I'm definitely going to go for the EB617 Mark II. This one, it basically sits on the shelf these days because all of the benefits that this gave me compared to the Chroma 617, I have in the newer camera, but I also have all of the additional benefits of the newer 3D printed camera. So hopefully that gives you an idea of which way you might want to go for your particular needs. As always, if you have any questions, by all means shoot them through in the comments section, or if you go to my website, there's a little About Me section where you can send me an email. Obviously, I do sell the 3D plans for the EB617 Mark II, so you can print it off and build your own, as well as hardware kits if you want that, as well as I also do sell fully printed versions of the camera. But hopefully that gives you a general idea and maybe helps you make some decisions on which camera you want to shoot 617 in. Other than that, there's not much else to say other than I hope you have a great day, and as always, say hi to your dog for me.